Look at Revelations chapter 20. Talking about consequences. The decisions that you make affect you and affect the people around you. And your indecision also affects you, affects people around you. The words that you hear, I mean, whether I preach it or you read it or whatever, you can take those words and you can put them into practice, or you can reject them. That's your choice. You know, I was listening, there's a really amazing thing on YouTube that you can look up. It's called 100 Reasons Why Evolution is Stupid. And this guy preaches, is really good, really, really good. The way he comes off and everything, I mean, it's really, he was a science teacher, he, you know, gave a lot of different scientific facts and everything. And he said a lot of good things, but you know, one of the things, we don't want to deal with consequences. And we try our best to try to find ways to kind of put pillows around us, to kind of buffer us from having to deal with them, you know. Evolution basically states that, you know, everything comes about from a, you know, well, the belief of Darwinistic naturalistic evolution is that it all is just an accident. It's not your fault. It's not your fault the way you are. You know, it's not your fault that you have these animalistic desires to kill or to steal or to do all these things. That's not your fault, you know. And that's what, you know, basically what it comes down to. I mean, you're an animal. You can't help your instincts, right? Morals are just something we agree upon to be able to live okay. You know, I've had discussion with people about that. You know, the idea that, you know, and it's sad because when you think about it, there's no purpose to life. I mean, that nihilistic idea that was really originated with Friedrich Nietzsche, I mean, look at where that led him. You know, I mean, he was insane at the end of his life, you know, from syphilis too. That kind of messed him up a little bit. But I mean, he was pretty messed up at the end of his life. But, you know, you think of that idea of no reason, no purpose. You know, there's no consequences. It's not your fault. You know, you are what you are because you're a product of what, you know, evolution gave you. That's the way you are. All your makeup, everything is just the way you are, and it's the way you're going to be, and there's nothing you can do about it. There's no consequences to your decisions. You know, if I go out and steal something, well, I can't help it. That's the way I was made. You know, I come from an animal that liked to steal the bananas from the monkey on the other tree. You know, I can't help it. It's in my genetic makeup, you know. I just can't help it. You know, I come from a group of, you know, primates that like to beat each other up, so I'm going to fight everybody. I just can't help it, you know. We used to have these big blood sport fights back in the, you know, primitive times. Caged off this little area with all the torches and have this little kumite with the little monkey guys fighting. Yeah, I just couldn't help it. It's in my genes. No, I'm joking. But see, and that's the thing. We want to put pillows around us. That's kind of how I look at it. Like getting us in this padded room where nothing can hurt us. Because we don't want to deal with the fact that our decisions have consequences. You are a free agent. You have the free will. There is a purpose. There is a destiny for you. And yes, there is a God who has control over all of this. And you will either serve him or you won't. And you will have to suffer the consequences of that decision. That's it. I mean, I don't care what kind of scientific mumbo jumbo you come up with to try to explain something or this or that. The bottom line of it is there is a creator. And there is a way to find out who that creator is. And if you one day you will stand before that creator and give an account for your life. I mean, that's just the way it works. Look at this in Revelations. I want to start. Let's start in verse 11 of chapter 20, sorry. Start in verse 11 in the first chapter. We'll just go through the whole book. Now, chapter 20, verse 11. And this is John. He's sitting here on this exile on this Isle of Patmos, and he sees this amazing revelation. And this is the part, I like this because it really says what I'm trying to get at here. And John says, he says, "And I saw a great white throne, and him who sat on it, and from whose presence the earth and heaven fled, and there was no place found for them. And I saw the dead, both great and small, standing before the throne. And the books were opened, and another book was opened, which was the book of life. And the dead were judged from the things which were written in the books, according to their deeds. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and Hades gave up the dead that were in them. And they were judged, every one of them, according to their deeds. And death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire." This is the second death, the lake of fire. "And if anyone's name was not found written in the book of life, they were thrown into the lake of fire." Now, I'm not going to get into eschatology and revelation stuff and what throne, judgment, all. I'm just going to basically, this is saying what I want it to say. one day we're all going to stand before God and give an account for our life. Those whose names are found in the book of life, you don't have nothing to worry about. Because guess what? Your deeds don't mean anything because your name's in the book of life. You know, what you did in this life has been washed clean by the blood of Christ. You know, the things that you did were already taken care of. You're in the book of life, you're fine. How do you get in the book of life? By confessing Jesus as Lord of your life, by putting your faith in him. By doing that, your name's on there. You know, like that old Pentecostal song, there's a new name written down in glory, and it's mine. I don't know why I even thought about that. I've been kind of stuck on old gospel songs lately. I don't know why, but it's in my genetic structure, I guess. But you see here that there's going to come a time of judgment, and that God's going to judge both the great and the small. You know, both the rich and the poor, both the famous and the infamous. I mean, they're all going to stand before the throne of God, and he's going to judge them according to their deeds, according to what they've done. And if their name's not written in the book of life, they have to suffer the consequences of that judgment. I mean, there's hell. And there's a hell to pay for your decisions. And if you decide not to serve God, that's the decision you've made. You have to suffer the consequences of it. And it's a hard reality. It's a hard fact. But you know, when it gets to be this time, if you wait until you're dead to make that decision, it's too late. You know, I like Keith Green said this in that altar call song. He said, you're going to find out that he's the way no matter which way you choose. You know, I mean, you're going to find out that, yeah, there is only one way to heaven. It's through Jesus Christ. Everyone's going to find that out. Every knee will bow. I mean, every tongue will confess that Jesus is Lord. I mean, that's in the Bible. But if you don't do it while you're here on earth, it's too late. You know, it's interesting that in the days of Noah, Jesus said this, like the end times, it's going to be like the days of Noah again. I don't even know what that means. And that's kind of trippy to even think about. When you think about all the stuff that was going on during the days of Noah, and you can kind of get into some trippy things about the Nephilim and all that kind of weirdness. But anyways, there's crazy stuff going on during the days of Noah. And Jesus said, it's going to be like that at the end of time. But the thing I think about is, look, you know, here's Noah. He went out and he told people, there's going to be a flood. Well, you know, according to scientists, it hadn't rained. There was water over the earth, and there was water under the earth. The water, the streams and everything on under the earth part, you know, it just flowed through, and it kept the gardens water and everything, and the water over the earth kept this canopy to where it was like a tropical kind of rainforest type thing. There was no rain, though. Drops of water weren't falling down. So for him to go out and say it's going to rain, it's kind of like me saying, hey, guess what? The Jabumba is happening tomorrow. You go, what the heck is the Jabumba? What the heck are you talking about? You know? I mean, that's what it sounded like to them. I'm like, rain? What the heck is rain? I don't even think Noah knew what rain was. I think he just went out and said, it's going to rain. There's going to be a flood. You know, I'm going to build a boat. I guess there's going to be water involved in this. I don't know. You know, so he's telling these people, and they don't listen. All the way to the point, I mean, he goes in, and God shuts the door. I mean, God shuts the door. Noah doesn't shut the door. This is kind of an interesting thing here. It's easy to read past this. Noah doesn't shut the door of the ark. God does. You know, I like how God says, my soul will not always contend with man. You know, there's going to come a point to where I'm done. And he reached that point. I don't understand why. I don't understand all the ins and outs of it. I could preach for 2 hours on that. But the bottom line of it is there came a time to where it was done. The door was shut. And all of those people who chose not to get on that ark had to suffer the consequences of their decision. And it led to death. You know, Proverbs said it. You know, the waywardness of the naive will lead to death. You know, the people who will not take the wisdom of God, it leads to death. The consequences of our decisions that we make on this earth are huge. And the most important one is that right there. I mean, if you have never decided to serve Jesus, if you never decided to make Jesus Lord of your life, I mean, you've got to consider that. You've got to think of that your decision to not serve him, or, you know, people say, I just don't want to think about it, you know, the agnostics, you know. I'm not saying there isn't a God. I'm not saying there is. I don't want to deal with it. Well, guess what? You're still making a decision. There's no such thing as an atheist because there really, no matter whether you deny it or not, there's a God. You can decide that you don't want to believe in that God. You know, you can't really actually say there is no such thing as God because that would mean that you were everywhere and that would make you God. So if you're not everywhere and you haven't been everywhere in the universe, then you can't establish the fact that there's no God.